They called themselves the Pagans, but there's nothing holy about them. From a small Maryland garage in 1957 to the violent highways of modern America, this club grew from a brotherhood of bikers into one of the most feared outlaw empires in U.S. history. With over 1,500 members across 20 states, they control meth pipelines worth millions, and their name alone sparks fear in bars, back roads, and entire towns. Behind that rise stand 5 men: Dobkin, Maran, Barbado, Katona, and Richter, each one pushing the Pagans deeper into the world of organized crime. Before we begin this ride into the dark heart of America's biker underworld, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a story like this. Lou Dobkin, the visionary who started it all. Maryland, 1957, a time when America looked picture perfect. Suburbs were neat, families were polite, and rebellion was something you only saw in the movies. But in one small garage in Prince George's County, a man named Lou Dobkin, a former Navy medic just back from service, was quietly breaking that mold. Dobkin wasn't trying to fit in. He was trying to build something different. What began as a few friends hanging around bikes turned into something that would last generations. He wasn't just forming a motorcycle club, he was building a brotherhood. With 12 other founding members, each one carefully chosen, Dobkin built the Pagans Motorcycle Club with precision. Every guy brought something to the table. Some could fix anything with an engine. Others had the kind of street sense you only learn the hard way. And Dobkin, he had the vision to turn it all into something much bigger. In the early days, the Pagans didn't care what you rode. Triumphs, Harleys, British, or American, it didn't matter. What mattered was the bond. The jackets were denim blue, the attitude was raw, and the purpose was clear: unity, loyalty, and brotherhood above all. Dobkin structured the club like a machine: rules, order, and systems that made sense. Decisions went through proper channels, new chapters had to meet real standards, and nobody got in without proving their worth. He was building an organization, not a free-for-all. And the man thought big. He created the Mother Club, a council of 13 senior members who'd lead the whole thing. 13 wasn't a random number, it meant something. Then came one of Dobkin's boldest moves. He set the national president's pay equal to the U.S. president's, around $100,000 a year. He called it a show of class. That's not just confidence, that's straight up gangster. Under Dobkin, the Pagans were tight-knit and disciplined. They weren't out for chaos or war. It was still a family, built on respect, loyalty, and pride. But as history would show, things were about to change, because the next man who took control brought a whole different kind of energy.
John Satan Marin, the man who made them monsters. If Lou Dobkin built the house, then John Satan Marin was the man who burned it down and rebuilt it into a fortress. Before joining the Pagans, Marin ran with the Sons of Satan Motorcycle Club, a group that started as a friendly veterans club but turned into something far darker under his watch. Marin had a talent for control. He knew how to turn loyalty into fear and respect into power. When the Pagans began moving into central Pennsylvania during the 1960s, it looked like a turf war was coming. 2 clubs, same territory. It should have ended in blood. But Marin had other plans. Instead of going head-to-head, he went straight for the top. He met Fred Dutch Burhans, the Pagans' president at the time, and the two hit it off. From there, Marin played it smart. He brought his most trusted men from the Sons into the Pagans, one by one, quietly and deliberately. It wasn't peace, it was a takeover from the inside. By the 1970s, Marin wasn't just part of the Pagans, he was running them. Membership shot up to nearly 5,000 strong, and the whole vibe of the club shifted overnight. Marin didn't just grow the club, he weaponized it. Under his lead, the Pagans turned ruthless. Drug trafficking, violent racketeering, and territorial wars became part of everyday business. The line between biker brotherhood and organized crime disappeared. Marin had taken a rebellious motorcycle club and reshaped it into a full-fledged criminal empire on wheels. But power built on violence never lasts forever. In the mid-1970s, Marin's run came crashing down. He was locked up on maiming and homicide charges, ending his reign, but not his influence. Because even from behind bars, his blueprint remained. The structure he built, the ruthlessness he taught, it all stayed. Marin turned the Pagans into something America had never seen before, and something law enforcement would spend decades trying to tear apart. David Bart Barbiado, the executive. By the time the 2000s rolled around, the Pagans weren't just a biker club anymore. They were a machine, a fully functional criminal network that moved money, drugs, and violence with business-like precision. And sitting at the top of it all was David Keith Bart Barbiero, a man who ran the club less like an outlaw and more like a CEO. Barbiero had the mind of an executive and the heart of a gangster. He managed the Pagans the way a corporate boss runs a Fortune 500 company, except his business wasn't stocks or software. It was meth, money, and muscle. But this was also the era when the walls started closing in. Federal law enforcement had spent years mapping out the club's structure, tracing every deal and every threat. Then, in October 2009, it all came crashing down.
A massive federal indictment dropped. 55 members and associates were charged with racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, and drug trafficking. The details were brutal. Investigators alleged that Barbiero and his national vice president, Floyd Jesse Moore, had plotted to kill an inmate suspected of cooperating with police. They'd even planned the murder of a rival club leader from the Avengers Motorcycle Club. That indictment peeled back the curtain on how deep the operation ran. The same bylaws that once defined the president's salary now laid out an entire drug distribution system. Which chapters sold what, where they sold it, and who got paid. The Mother Club, the Pagans' ruling council, had one primary job: collect the dope money. When Barbiero and Moore were arrested later that year, it hit the organization hard. Their leadership, their order, gone overnight. In December 2009, Barbiero was sentenced to federal prison for racketeering. But as history kept proving, taking down one man never meant the end of the Pagans. Cutting off the head didn't kill the beast. It just left an empty throne. And in the world of outlaw bikers, an empty throne never stays empty for long. Dennis Rooster Katona, the enforcer. Then came Dennis Rooster Katona, a man whose entire reputation was built on two things: violence and loyalty. Katona wasn't just another pagan. He was the kind of member who lived and breathed the outlaw code. He climbed the ranks fast, eventually becoming the national sergeant at arms, the enforcer of discipline and order across the club. And his rise was cemented during one of the most infamous moments in pagan history, the 2002 Hellraiser Ball incident in Long Island. That day, the Pagans showed up like a military unit. They came from Pennsylvania, Maryland, Ohio, and other states, hundreds of men, all organized, all with a clear mission: retrieve pagan property by force if necessary. What followed was absolute chaos. Fists, chains, knives, a full-blown war in the middle of a biker convention. By the time it was over, one man was dead, 10 others were injured, and 73 pagans were convicted. Katona was among them. He ended up serving 63 months in federal prison for racketeering conspiracy. But prison didn't break Rooster. It refined him. When he got out, he didn't fade away. He came back even harder. Not long after, he allegedly rose to the top as national president of the Pagans. In 2011, his reign took another hit. A Pennsylvania State Police SWAT team raided his home in Hempfield Township. Inside, they found over 3 ounces of cocaine, nearly 4 ounces of meth worth around $20,000, and about $4,000 in cash. Authorities confirmed what everyone already knew: Rooster Katona was running the club at the national level.
Katona's leadership was pure old school. He believed that in the outlaw world, respect doesn't come from words, it comes from fear. And fear only comes when people know what you're willing to do. Even after all the prison time, and despite battling leukemia and heart disease, Rooster never lost his place in pagan legend. He was the embodiment of their code: hard, loyal, and unrelenting. To this day, his name carries the kind of weight only earned in blood. Keith Conan Richter, the empire builder. If there's one man who defines what the modern pagans have become, it's Keith Conan the Barbarian. Tall, muscular, long hair flowing down his shoulders. Richter looked like he'd walked straight out of a war movie. But behind that presence was something even more dangerous. A man who didn't just lead the pagans, he transformed them. Richter's story reads like pure outlaw mythology. Before he ever took the throne, he'd already spent 16 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated assault in aid of racketeering. When he got out in 1998, he didn't come back quietly. He allegedly seized control of the Pagans in a violent, hostile takeover, installing himself as national president. His right-hand man was just as feared, Durondi, better known as Hellboy. Together, they launched what members would later call the Day of Reckoning. It wasn't a meeting, it was a purge. Anyone suspected of disloyalty was out. Some were beaten, some worse. By the end of it, there was no doubt who ran the Pagans. But what really made Conan dangerous wasn't his violence, it was his vision. Around 2018, he kicked off what became known as the Blue Wave. It was an expansion campaign unlike anything the Pagans had ever seen. He tore up old rules, opening membership to ethnic minorities and even former street gang members, a radical shift for a club that had once been almost exclusively white. His goal wasn't purity, it was power, and it worked. Under Richter's rule, the Pagans exploded in size, from a few hundred members to over 3,000, with chapters in 49 out of 50 states. New fronts opened in Texas, Nevada, Puerto Rico, and they allegedly had their eyes on Arizona, Oklahoma, and Colorado. The Blue Wave wasn't just expansion, it was conquest.
The legacy of fear. These 5 men, Lou Dobkin, John Satan Moran, David Bart Barbato, Dennis Rooster Katona, and Keith Conan Richter didn't just lead a motorcycle club. They built an empire that now federal prosecutors rank among the big 4 outlaw motorcycle organizations in America. They redefined what a biker gang could be, turning rebellion into business and brotherhood into organized crime. Today, the Pagans are still rolling strong. They operate in over 20 states with more than 1,500 active members, controlling drug pipelines that move hundreds of kilograms of methamphetamine across the country. And their violence? It's not limited to enemies. Innocent people, bar patrons, random motorists, anyone unlucky enough to cross paths with a pagan have found themselves caught in their storm. And a military-style raid at a sports bar where masked pagans stormed in and checked every patron one by one, hunting for their targets. In 2023, Christopher Lamar Baker, a national leader from Raleigh, was sentenced to 75 years in prison for trafficking over 268 kilograms of meth and ordering torture so brutal that it left one member without fingers, cut off with an electric saw in front of others.
What makes the Pagans so feared isn't just what they've done, it's how they've evolved. From Dobkin's structure to Marin's criminal ambition, Barbato's corporate-style control, Katona's raw enforcement, and Richter's empire building, every leader shaped the Pagans into something deadlier, smarter, and harder to stop. They didn't just create a biker gang. They built a legacy of fear, one that still rides across America, chapter by chapter, coast to coast, leaving blood and intimidation in its trail. And as long as there are men willing to live and die by that savage code, the Pagans Motorcycle Club will remain exactly what they've become known for, America's most feared biker gang. That's not an exaggeration. That's the cold, hard truth of the asphalt underworld.